What happens when a crime is not only committed, but almost marketed by the person accused? 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick shocked her quiet Georgia community in ways no one could have imagined. She wasn't just accused of murdering her parents, she allegedly tried to make the case go viral by pitching it to true crime influencers. This isn't just a murder story. It's a chilling example of how crime, media, and psychology can collide in the most disturbing way. Welcome to Mindblis. The discovery. It was February in Carrollton, Georgia, a place where most families know their neighbors, and violent crime is rare enough to make headlines. But inside one home, tragedy had already unfolded. On a seemingly ordinary evening, Sarah's younger sister stumbled upon a horrific scene. The bodies of their mother, 41-year-old Amber Patrick, and their stepfather, 45-year-old Chris Patrick. Both dead. Panicked, she dialed 911. The house that had once been filled with family arguments and laughter was now a crime scene. Police arrived quickly, but what they found raised more questions than answers. At first, no one could believe it. How could this quiet suburban family suddenly be torn apart by such violence? But the suspicion wouldn't take long to find its way to Sarah Grace, the family's teenage daughter. The investigation. Authorities launched a full investigation. There were no signs of forced entry, no intruders fleeing into the night. The horror had come from inside the house. Neighbors were interviewed. Friends from school described Sarah as troubled but quiet, sometimes rebellious, sometimes withdrawn. But nothing could explain what investigators were uncovering. The younger sister, traumatized by her discovery, provided critical details. Soon, law enforcement pieced together enough evidence to make an arrest. Months later, in July, Sarah was taken into custody. And that's when this story took an even darker turn. The shocking revelation. Before her arrest, Sarah had allegedly been contacting true crime influencers. That's right, she was messaging people online who create the same kind of content you're listening to right now. Except instead of being a viewer, she was the suspect. She pitched her own case to them like a story idea. She called it a really big hit. She even offered intel that she claimed no one else had. Imagine that for a second. A teenager accused of killing her own parents trying to turn their deaths into content. Not to process grief, not to tell the truth, but to control the narrative, to become the center of the story. For investigators, this revelation was beyond disturbing. It suggested something more than just a violent outburst. It suggested calculation. Inside the courtroom, when Sarah finally appeared in court, the nation saw a teenager who didn't act like the stereotypical grief-stricken daughter. She walked in, smiling. She hugged her attorneys. For a moment, she looked more like a student meeting her friends after school than a defendant facing life-changing charges. But then everything shifted. As the hearing progressed, Sarah broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Those two extremes, smiling and then weeping, captured the media's attention. Were they signs of manipulation? Or the raw emotions of a girl too young to fully comprehend the gravity of what she'd done? Psychologists watching the footage couldn't help but speculate. Was this narcissism? Immaturity? Or was Sarah seeking the same attention she had already chased when contacting influencers? The media crossroads. This is where the story takes on a meta quality. Normally, true crime stories are told about criminals. This time, the accused wanted to tell the story with us. It raises uncomfortable questions. Is true crime media feeding a culture where notoriety is rewarded? Can vulnerable or disturbed individuals see crime as a pathway to fame? And what responsibility do creators, platforms, and audiences carry in shaping that culture? For Sarah, reaching out to influencers wasn't just reckless. It may now play a role in how prosecutors argue her case. The act itself could be used as evidence of her mindset, her motives, and her state of mind before arrest. Where we leave off. Right now, Sarah Grace Patrick is awaiting trial. The evidence against her includes not just what was found in the home, but her own bizarre attempts to frame her crime as entertainment. Her story has already shaken the community, but it's also forcing society to reflect on something much bigger. When murder and media collide, where is the line between justice and spectacle? And in Sarah's case, was she seeking attention, control, or something far darker? The courtroom theater. When Sarah walked into the courtroom, it wasn't just a legal proceeding. It became a stage. She smiled warmly at her attorneys. She laughed softly, as if nothing was wrong. Observers were stunned. This was a girl accused of a double murder, not a student attending a debate club meeting. But as testimony unfolded, her expression cracked. Her voice wavered. She began sobbing, hands shaking, face buried in tissues. Was this genuine grief or carefully timed emotion? The courtroom became a place where psychology and performance blurred. Psychological angles. Experts looking at Sarah's case highlight several troubling possibilities. Narcissism and attention-seeking. Her alleged outreach to influencers suggests a need to control her own narrative, to be seen, even in the aftermath of tragedy. Adolescent brain development. At 17, the brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment and impulse control, is still developing. Could this have influenced her reckless decisions? Trauma or rage? Was this a crime of anger born from family conflict? Or was it premeditated, a calculated attempt to gain freedom or notoriety? Every theory leads to darker questions, and none offer comfort. The influencer connection. The most haunting detail remains her attempt to involve the true crime community. She allegedly told influencers that her case could be a really big hit. She offered them intel. This was not the language of a grieving child. This was marketing. It forces us to confront an unsettling possibility. Has crime itself become content for some people? Have we blurred the line between victim, perpetrator, and performer? And most disturbingly, did Sarah believe that her parents' deaths could somehow make her famous? Legal fallout. Prosecutors are expected to use her influencer messages as evidence. They may argue it demonstrates motive, manipulation, and a lack of remorse. Her defense, however, may claim these were immature, impulsive acts of a teenager who didn't fully grasp reality. The jury will face an impossible task: to untangle genuine grief from performance, immaturity from malice. And in the middle of it all is a 17-year-old who may spend the rest of her life behind bars. The bigger picture. But Sarah's story is more than a family tragedy. It reflects something much larger: the influence of media on the way we see ourselves. In a world where true crime dominates YouTube, TikTok, and podcasts, the accused may no longer fear being forgotten. Instead, they may crave being featured. This is where society must ask itself: are we unintentionally creating a culture where the most horrific crimes are rewarded with the most attention? And if so, what happens when the next Sarah Grace Patrick decides that being a headline is worth everything? The questions left behind. Sarah's trial is ongoing. The evidence will speak. The jury will decide. But the questions she leaves us with may haunt long after the verdict. Was she driven by rage against her parents? Was she chasing the spotlight of a culture obsessed with crime stories? Or was she simply a broken teenager acting out in the most violent way possible? In the end, the tragedy belongs to Amber and Chris Patrick, the victims whose lives were taken too soon. But the story forces us to confront something darker about ourselves: our fascination with crime, and how far someone might go to feed it. This is not just about one teenager. It's about a society where murder can be pitched like a storyline and consumed like entertainment. This is Mindblis. Stay curious, stay critical, and remember, the truth is often far more chilling than fiction.